Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another video. We're going to be bringing you today talking about Star Wars, and we're going to be talking about something that has to do with, a really in-depth analysis of some of the events that happened in the original trilogy and the subtext involved, and that is going to be surrounding Darth Vader, and the possibility that Darth Vader was actually plotting to overthrow Emperor Palpatine, Sidious, the Emperor of the Galactic Empire. And to join me, someone who also knows a lot about Star Wars and who is a big-time fan of the series just like myself, and his name is...
Hi, Mike. It's Mike from... no, that's not my name. It's it's Geekdom. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, and this is something I've kind of wondered about for a long time, because, when you go back and you watch the original trilogy, it seems like there is a lot of evidence there, and as I'm sure you're going to get into, there also seems to be a lot of evidence even in some extra materials as well. So what are your thoughts about this topic? Do you think that the evidence is there that Vader was actually plotting, to overthrow Palpatine, or do you think that maybe that's reading a little bit too into
No, it was definitely there. I think it was in the back of his mind the entire time. Now, whether or not he was plotting to, that's really kind of that's kind of up to the viewer, I suppose. But you could certainly make an argument. In the movies, because that's the primary canon, there's a few different examples of him teasing us with this.
Yeah.
Chronologically, if you go back to Revenge of the Sith, he tells Padme that, his powers are stronger than the Chancellor, and that he can overthrow him and they can rule the galaxy. So he was already thinking about overthrowing Palpatine even all the way back then. And what I believe happened, my theory is on what happened was that when he got into the fight with Obi-Wan, and of course he was rebuilt to be Darth Vader, I think that his mechanical body made it difficult for him to attack Palpatine in any sort of physical way, because I feel like had he done that, the Force lightning from Palpatine would have ended up killing him.
Which is, obviously what happened in the end of Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. Once that lightning hit his electronics, he was fucked. But I feel like he kind of knew that, and I feel like if he had tried to get a mutiny going, they wouldn't have followed him. Plus, he was so into the dark side that it was hard. But then, of course, there's that scene in The Empire Strikes Back where he tells Luke, you can destroy the Emperor. I have foreseen this. It is your destiny. We can rule the galaxy as father and son. So he's already planned to overthrow him twice.
Yeah.
And that's just based on the primary canon. If you go back to the new EU, which is now called canon, in the Darth Vader books, he finds out, and these are now canon, the Darth Vader series takes place after A New Hope but before Empire Strikes Back, and he discovers from Boba Fett that the X-Wing pilot that blew up the Death Star was indeed Luke Skywalker, and that's when he actually finds out his name is Skywalker, and he realizes it, and he gets so pissed off that he cracks an entire side of a ship, which is pretty awesome.
So how does that whole thing come about, though? Like, how does he find out that his last name is Skywalker in the first place?
Well, you definitely, I'm going to highly recommend that you and everybody else read the comic. In the Darth Vader comic, what happens is that he runs into Luke again, they have this factory attack, and then what happens is he hires bounty hunters, because Vader used bounty hunters, and specifically Boba Fett, to go back to Tatooine and to find as much information as he can about what happened. So what happens is Boba Fett goes back to Tatooine, and then Luke discovers that Obi-Wan left something for him inside of Obi-Wan's house on Tatooine. Well, lo and behold, Boba Fett and Luke meet up there, and they have a little bit of a fight, which is pretty cool. Then what happens is Boba Fett goes to the Mos Eisley Cantina, and he starts questioning everybody about the Millennium Falcon, the Corellian freighter that escaped the cantina. This is a few months after A New Hope, and then finally somebody says Skywalker. His name was Skywalker, and they knew that because of the fact that I guess that at some point his name was said or something, and then Boba Fett goes and reports to Vader. So that's how he found out from somebody in the cantina, which is an awesome scene, by the way, because this one big guy steps up to Boba Fett and he gets fried. So that's another example. And if you want to go back to the pre-Disney canon, the pre-Disney EU, there's been tons of stories, most famously The Force Unleashed, where Vader had a secret apprentice and, was somewhat plotting to eventually team up with this apprentice to take out the Emperor because he couldn't do it by himself.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there extra evidence from the EU that talks about when the Emperor created Darth Vader's suit, that he actually put in fail-safes to stop Vader from rebelling against him? He actually put in things that he could shut off his equipment in his body, just in case, that could shut off his life support and different things just in case he saw this happening. Because obviously Sith have always, killed their masters. That's the thing going all the way back.
They never trust each other.
Yeah. So is it possible, it's likely that the Emperor could have seen this happening, because he did say the Emperor has foreseen you doing this.
Yeah, he's foreseen seen Luke's power. Yeah, absolutely. As far as the question you're asking, I'm not entirely sure because I have not read every EU book. There's so many books out there, and nowadays the majority of those are not canon. But one thing that we do know, which might back up your theory from a book that I did read, is that all of the clones in the clone army have inside of their heads what's called an inhibitor chip, and the inhibitor chip is what essentially makes them slaves. When you have the inhibitor chip, you basically are listening to whoever you're programmed to listen to, and you're kind of a zombie. But what wound up happening was, as the clones aged, the chip started to wear out, and that's when we had clone mutinies, which is why in the original trilogy most of the clones have been replaced by actual real people, because the Empire started to recruit actual people, which of course the First Order took to the next level in the new trilogy, because what we understand from what was said in the film and the expanded Force Awakens novels and the visual guide, which I just picked up by the way from Amazon, that they picked up children. They kind of did what the Jedi were doing. They would take children and they would be raised in the First Order to be stormtroopers. You know, they were from childbirth almost, or from a very young age. So
yeah,
the clones were a bad idea, but perhaps that's kind of what you're talking about, something similar to that, because the Emperor always had, you know, a backup plan. In fact, I'll go even further. One of the big mysteries in the Star Wars community right now that we're trying to unravel is, which is by the way very cool, is that before the Emperor died in the Battle of Endor, he told all the regional governors, if something were to happen to me, it's like almost like he knew it was going to happen. If something were to happen to me, take the fleet to beyond the Outer Rim, to the unknown region. There is where you need to go. And of course, it's heavily implied that Supreme Leader Snoke is from the unknown region. And there's a hint that was given to us in one of the Aftermath books where basically Palpatine is like, that's the source of the dark side. Now, what that means, I don't know. It's very creepy. But the point is, I'm rambling here. The point is that Palpatine always had a backup plan. So it would not surprise me one bit if he had a fail-safe switch on Vader. Or hell, he'll just shock his ass to death. I mean, what's Vader going to do?
Yeah, now, actually talking about another thing we haven't kind of covered yet, what about in Jedi? Now, this is something I've always kind of wondered too. In Return of the Jedi, there's that whole thing, of course, where, you know, Palpatine seems to be trying to get Luke to kill Vader to become his apprentice, but,
yeah,
I mean, Vader probably didn't want to die. He probably didn't want this guy to kill him. So when Vader was trying to turn Luke to the dark side, do you think he still at that point in time was trying to get Luke to, you know, help him to kill the Emperor? Or do you think that, like, at that point in time, he was just too subservient and he just didn't have those plans anymore?
No, I think it was an ego thing. I think what happened there was, if you remember in the Conversation Empire, that they wanted to turn Luke to the dark side. So basically the Emperor wanted to have Luke and Vader under his control, essentially breaking the rule of two. And why not? I mean, you've got a whole army of Skywalkers. Why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah.
But of course, as we both know, the Emperor was going to eventually plan on turning Luke so evil that he would kill his own father. But at the same time, the Emperor's plan, this is where it makes sense, was if Skywalker could not be turned, he needed to be destroyed. So basically what Palpatine was trying to do is to get Vader and Luke to fight and get one of them to kill the other one. And if they had done that, they would be in the dark side, which it did not happen. And that's where he failed. But the idea was that it was a win-win for the Emperor, you know, in that I'm either going to get the young Padawan or I'm going to keep Vader. Either way, I'm living it up. You know what I mean? That's the way I always saw it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it would have been interesting, though, if they didn't end up fighting and Luke just turned, because what happens at that point is Luke just be like, yeah, this one's my dad, so I'm just going to kill you.
Yeah, they both would have teamed up on the Emperor. Now, who would have won? That's the question. I don't know.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, Luke did throw away his lightsaber, so he couldn't have defended against it in the first place, but Luke with the lightsaber and Vader, you know, against Force Lightning, that would have been, like, a much better fight than, you know, Luke without one getting his ass killed by Palpatine. But yeah, I mean, overall, there definitely seems to be enough evidence there to suggest that Vader really did have this idea for a very long time, maybe all along, you know, if we're going to count the prequels and what he said back then, that he did have the idea and the concepts to try and overthrow the Emperor and maybe become the Emperor himself. I mean, I kind of wonder if the Empire would have been even, you know, more hungry for power and even more vengeful if Vader was in charge, considering how many of his own admirals the man killed.
They don't care. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't give a shit. But yeah, so tell us your own thoughts down below. Have you ever thought of this idea, and what other kind of Star Wars topics would you like us to talk about? Because there's so many more out there. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. As I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
forget to subscribe or I'll stick the lightsaber up your ass.
Luke, come to the side with the gains. We have protein powder.